Last episode, I installed the core of a Bluetti electrical system for my camper van, and I got the main unit in using an Apex 300 and a B500K expansion battery, the Charger 2, which is going to be my alternator charger, and the D1 hub, which is going to be the main 12-volt DC output, but I didn't get any of the additional bits in. Now, to set the scene, I'm currently up for my 5th Nordic Arctic winter, and it's about -20 and below outside during the course of this video. But this is my first winter with my new van, and I didn't have time to get the electrics in. I barely had time in about 10 days to build all the furniture for this trip. Now, whilst I prefer traditional electrical systems, I've been working with Bluetti for a couple of years now, and I have quite a lot of their kit. So I thought, why not install their plug and play electrical system, and let's actually see how it works. So for the last week, it's been hovering around -20 to -30, so I'm indoors and I'm in my friend Frecco's workshop, which managed to squeeze my van in with a few centimetres to spare. And it's a fantastically stocked garage. I've got loads of space, I've got a 16 kilowatt diesel heater, and I've even got reindeer outside, which I have to take care of.
Reindeer fed.
This episode, I'm hoping to get some of the finer details in the 12-volt fuse boxes, AC hookup with an external hookup point, and remote monitoring via my Wi-Fi or Starlink. And after all that's all installed during this video, I want to skip it to a couple months later and give you sort of the outro, how I've got on with the system for a couple months of actually using it. Now, this video is working with Bluetti, but they didn't give me the equipment in this video for the purpose of this video. I already had it from years of working with them. I just pitched them the concept and the idea of installing it in my van and to make some videos of content about it. But let's get back into the workshop and get the rest of the system installed. Right, it is a new day. There was some all right northern lights last night.
Just popped out of the van, head into the house for a shower, and yeah. Can't get away with it.
And time to finish off the install for the D1 hub, which is the hub with the 12-volt 50 amp output based on an Anderson connector. So the kit comes with the Anderson connector and the 2 end points which go into the end of the D1 hub. Yeah, that's fine. I have some already sort of made up, so I'm just going to use my ones and keep those crimps spare. And Anderson connectors like this, they have a little bar in it, and then there's a little lip on the actual lug. Push it in, clips in, and stays there. So positive and negative. There we go. In. And let's get it up to my fuse board now. So, right, to make sure that fits on. Probably bend those a little bit that way. Right, let's get this into the back of the van. Right, I am technically mounting it upside down, but that's because I don't want these wires to be switched around. So if I... Okay, so if I do it about there. Right, let's get the first circuit wired up. Wait, my big skylight up here has a big wire on it, and actually I should just be able to run it. Hopefully there's enough tail and I don't have to extend it. Now all the wiring for this van, for this trip, is completely temporary. At the end of the trip, when I redo a lot of the electrics, and specifically when I put all my cabinetry in, I will have cableways running at the back of the cabinetry, so it's kind of easier to run the cables. At the minute, it's just going to be a bit sort of messy. Right then, let's go get some ring terminals and start getting this together. Right, that's the first one in. So if we plug this into here, make sure it's all correct. And all being well, if I do this, it should turn on. Fuse, Alex, fuse. Attempt 2. Now let's give it a try. We've got a light. Right, DC side done. Well, the light's on and we are getting a DC output reading as well from the top of the apex. Okay, that is one side done. The rest of the DC circuits will get put in during another video, but DC side is done. We've got alternator charging, we should have a reverse charging feature, and we've got a 12-volt fuse box rigged up. Now let's concentrate on the AC side. So for the purpose of this setup, it's very simple. I want one socket with the appropriate protection to just plug into the power station. So if I'm on hookup, there is AC the AC will charge the power station. That's because I've got the standard AC charging cable plugged into the Apex 300. And would also be directly passed through to my sockets as well. So I bought one of these just because it had an enclosure and it was easy. The fact that it's the waterproof outside one and lockable is not too important in this context. It was just easy to get everything in one. We've got the consumer unit and my RCBO, which is going to be my overcurrent protection and my residual current protection. Feel free to pause here to read the model number, but the most particular point I want to bring up is a Type A RCBO because there is a potential for DC to be in the system. We've got what I'm going to use for my hookup point for this trip. That's going to be your standard sort of hookup cable. And the cable that I had left is Arctic Blue flexible tri-core cable, and this is 2.5 mil squared tri-core, so probably a little bit over for what my purpose is, but it's the cable I had. The other thing we will need to do is bond the earth to the vehicle's metalwork as well, so we are compliant within at least the UK regulations and required for the RCBO to actually work. Right, momentary delay from doing AC electrics because the reindeer need fed. I think they are hungry. Right, we will continue my plan of not having the right parts for the job. So I have some solar glands missing half the options, and I don't really want my cables chafing around or just in big holes, so I'm going to drill these out to allow me to put in a solar gland. These are about 25 mil glands and these are 20 mil holes, so I don't actually have the correct. Let's put some headphones on. Go, better than nothing. And we're going to do the same for this as well. Now let's just get these knockout ones out to begin with. Reminds me of soft jaws. Not really soft jaws, but look at this vise, is a little bit too far back. Bit of cardboard should do some soft jaws temporarily. Excellent, one side done. Oh well, there we go. Right, I think next I'll get these mounted in the vehicle and then we'll start running the hookup point. Right, let's get the AC side stuff in. Right, plug the cable in for the power station. Close it up so that's nicely locked in. All right, now let's get this one in as well. That's all nicely mounted. We'll leave that open for now just so I can test the continuity, but we need to get the actual hookup point and the earth bond done next. But there's another hole in here, so let's start getting that run.
I've run it around the back of the cupboard, and this next section is not going to be fun. Because I've been in the Arctic for a couple of weeks, everything is cold and everything has been bone dry, but you know, snow starts to build up in places. Now, I've been in a workshop with a big heater, so everything has melted out over the last 24 hours, but because it's still cold low down, it's then frozen. So underneath the van is currently either wet or covered in wet ice, which is not particularly fun. But what I've done, same as I did at my last van actually, I've run my cable here. So there is a gland here, which enters into sort of a small cavity, which I can get access to from behind, so I can run my cable in. And also, so I can put a stud there. So I'm going to drill a hole in here, sand the metalwork off, put a lug on the end of it, and then bolt through and get access to the bolt from behind. Specifically for the UK regs, your AC earth bond and your DC negative chassis bonds have to be different locations and not using the same stud. Other countries is a little bit different. So I can then run, for the time being actually, I will probably just cut a hole in this rubber gland and run the cable straight through it. Right, let's first lie under the van and have a look at that. And then this is what I'm talking about. It's still cold enough on the floor that the ice has melted off, but starts to freeze up before it actually gets anywhere. But underneath the van, it's all wet. However, I think I can get into some of these cavities here via those little plugs. Joy. Right, I think I'm just gonna have to get under here and start having a look. Really? Ow. Actually, there's a cavity here which is not filled with debris. So that might be quite a good option, and it's got access to that chassis member for cabling. So I think I'm gonna figure out how you take this chunk of the body panel off. I might be lucky and it might just be a few body pieces. Go on, be nice, just be 2 clips or something like that. Ow. In fact, was nowhere near as easy as I had anticipated to just remove this bit of corner trim. Right, more recommendations on removing the bumper. I think this is not going to remove because I've got this rear tow bar in the way. Right, pried off. Let's clean up that metalwork. Right, let's get this one then. So my earth bonding point, I want it to be somewhere which I can visually see to check on it, make sure it's not loose. So I think I'm going to go shorten this cable later on, but probably around there. Really big. What is this? All right, it's important you have good contact, so clean off some of the paintwork. Here we go. And let's clearly mark it as well that it is my earthing point. Right, that'll work all tidied off. There we go. Right, earth point made. Next up, figuring out how I want to finish running this cable. Right, let's drill some holes. Well, the only paint I can find in the workshop is gold spray paint. I can get the lid off. Which is probably not the best option, but better than nothing. This spray paint was just to protect the raw edges of the metal holes I've just drilled. Next hole is a little bit bigger. I need to drill a hole so I can put a gland, so I can run the Arctic Blue AC cable from inside the van to outside. The main reason I'm going to all this extra work is I'm just not a fan of the side-mounted hookup points on vans, and I prefer to have a hidden style, which means I just got to get a little bit more creative with the wiring for it. And the main reason for all these glands is because I've got the wiring going through the holes and I don't want any potential risk of chafing, especially on wires which I can't see because they're hidden within the bodywork. Another way you could do it is if you had conduit and you could run in the cable within a conduit opposed to using glands. I've already got glands available. All it's left to do was just wire up the actual hookup socket itself. Yep, nice. How fuck ain't these kind of... Okay, okay, let's us now get... Okay. Excellent. Right, let's get this cover back on. Right. Right then, now let's get it installed. Right, I need to see this little spanner. Right, Now I get this whole corner reassembled again. Actually, before we test this for the first time, let's just make sure there is continuity between the earth. Right, so let's just make sure there's no continuity between... Right, let's just check if there is continuity between the metalwork of the van and the earth. Cool. Right, that appears to be functional. Let's get this on. Right then. Right, let's plug it in. Okay, we are plugged in. Nothing should happen just yet because it's not turned on. Right, unplug, let's switch this on. That's on. Let's just test it. Resets. Cool. Click this. Red light comes on. Click that. Now let's have a look at the apex. Right, apex is charging off AC. Excellent, so let's get that closed. And then that can get put down as well. Right, AC done. Although now I have the job of putting the back core of the van back together. Right, so that's the AC setup. So now if I want to plug the van in, the power station starts charging if I'm on an electrical hookup, and it's going to do it in a way which is safe and regulatory to the UK. Now, I haven't got the AC running around the vehicle because this is a power station, and I don't see a way, or don't know of a way, which you can run hardwired cabling around the vehicle using a power station, but to have it to be safe and have a consumer unit which is actually going to function. You can't just put a consumer unit on the end of a plug and plug it into the front. That's not how it works for a number of different reasons. And that's specifically because of how the inverter produces its AC. It's different than how the hookup AC is coming in. Both AC electricity, but it does it in a slightly different way, which means you can't plug a consumer unit in. So I have to plug all my devices, if I want to use them for the rest of this trip, into the front of the power station, which I'm totally fine with. Although that being said, the Apex 300 does have a domestic use case, and it does have a hardwired and lockable socket on the side, and something called the A1 hub, but I can't actually find much information about it, or if that would actually allow you to hardwire the power station like this into the vehicle with hidden cables in the walls and to have some sort of consumer unit for your relevant AC protection. I don't know, but yeah, AC is done. DC is sorted, we've got the fuse box. I'm not going to show you running all my individual circuits, that's not really necessary for this video. That'll be in the next one. We've got the AC charging off the engine. I'll probably also set up the charge cable as well, which allows me to charge my other power station to keep that charged up automatically when whatever I do in settings is, and that will prioritize over the main battery or the secondary power station. And if I did have solar, which I don't because it's in the Arctic and it's dark, nor do I have it on the roof at the minute, you could plug your solar into there or the power station itself. So we've got engine charging, we've got 50 amp DC supply, we've got AC with protection. Now I want to do one final thing, which is remote monitoring. So I need to go set up another bit of kit. Right, one of the other features I want to do is set up remote monitoring, because that is one of the things you can do with the Bluetti system. Now I am aware this already got a fuse in it. I'm going to run this elsewhere in the vehicle, but for the purpose of this video and testing, I just want to get it up and running to show it working. Right, plug that in. That circuit's live. Plug in my camera. Right, let's go get my SIM card. Right, so this is just my 4G router. Now I do have the antennas on the roof. Obviously they're not plugged in. I'm just hoping for the purpose of this video, or right now, that I don't need the antenna plugged in. To put in my SIM card with my European roaming on it. And let's see what happens. Maybe we have to reboot it. Let's just reboot it, see if that changes anything. Right, we're getting somewhere. Okay, so it's got a SIM card installed. No signal. That's not surprising because there's no antennas attached. I think it does need one of the aerials plugged in at least. If you watch one of the earlier videos, you can see that my cable in, I've got a 4G puck on the roof, and these cables reach here. Later on, this will probably be elsewhere in the van where these cables do reach. Let's plug in the aerials. Yeah, you can see my SIM card because it knows it's E is the operator. So aerial plugged in. Right, I think we've got internet. That's now gone up to 3 bar. Right, now, okay, let's just test by going to Google. 4G internet. Right, we've got internet. So, next task. Bluetti, refresh my list. Right, Apex 300. Reset Wi-Fi. So we're going to bind the Apex 300 to look for a different Wi-Fi. So we'll get rid of that. Wi-Fi settings, allow when using app. Connected, okay. And let's then also do the same for the Charger 2. And let's just go do on another power station as well. Right, they're all connected. Now let's go outside and test it out. Right, workshop is over there. I am not connected to the Wi-Fi of the actual unit itself in the van, and I'm currently on my just the hotspot, which the phone I'm filming on has been made. So, Charger 2 remote access. Give it a second. There we go. I can see currently got 30% in the battery. Charging system's currently on, and then also if I just click on the Apex itself, give it a second, I can see what's going on with the Apex. So there's remote connectivity. I can now remote access the Bluetti electrical system based in the van whilst I'm away on this trip. Yeah. Right, if you've made it this far, well done, because I have a Bluetti giveaway. As much as I like working with Bluetti, which helps fund my trips like this, whenever I can, I try and give back to the community as well. But I've got a giveaway for a Bluetti AC70. For all the main information and terms and conditions and dates associated with the giveaway, please do have a look in the description, which will say the closing date. But if you wanted to enter the Bluetti giveaway, please type below in the comment section how you would use your AC70. And specifically make sure you use AC70 because I'm going to use that as the search word to randomly select the winner when I draw the prize. And then I'll put you in contact with Bluetti, who will send you the unit. So thanks Bluetti for supporting the giveaway in this dedicated video for the community. Right, back on to the next bit. So, it's now a little while after that last bit of footage in the Arctic, and I've been back in the UK. So I've had the system in for a little while now, and I wanted to do a bit of video about how I've got on with it. The good, the bad, and what are my thoughts. Now, first off, the Bluetti style ecosystem is meant to be plug and play, and in many ways, it is. The core of the system, the battery, the inverter in the power station, the expansion battery, the D1 hub, the Charger 2 alternator charger, it was very plug and play. I got the whole core of the system in an afternoon. But all the additional wiring, like doing the DC fuse boxes and stuff like that, is obviously not plug and play. You've got to spend hours or days in the workshop after the main core of the video installing all the things like the router, the Starlink, the fans, lights, the fridge install. So yes, the core of the system, you can get it up and running very quick, but it's still going to take you time to put together a full van electrical system, wiring in all the other bits and bobs. And to open with, I said in the first video that install, the Bluetti ecosystem for me is going to be a temporary system. I want an electrical system for the rest of the Arctic. And later on in the spring or the summer of this year, when I'm back in the UK and I rebuild and finish off the van, I'm going to put a more traditional electrical system in because that's my preference. How did I get on for the rest of the Arctic? Really, honestly, fine. But there are a few little things I will bring up when we get onto that later on. Generally, the electrical system, you don't want to have to fiddle or play with it day to day, and I didn't. It just sort of worked, which is really all you expect to do. All the 12-volt appliances I had just worked and run after I wired it up, and I just carried on with my daily use. Now, one of the things I do miss that you can't do with power stations really at the minute is to have hardwired AC sockets around the van. I do have to plug everything into the front of the unit at the time. For me, on a temporary setup, that's not a deal breaker. I can just plug my induction stove for cooking into the front of it, or anything else AC-wise that I'm using. So I think in that context, if someone needs a reasonably simple system, overall, pretty just plug and play put in is a good option. And 12 volt at 50 amp is plenty enough for the vast majority of things people are going to want to run. Now, on to the next bit of where I did experience a few little things which I think could be done better and are more how the software works than the hardware. Now then, some of the things I thought could be better, feedback, and some of the issues or quirks that I've observed using this system. Now, whilst the D1 hub generally works fine powering all the things I want and having my fixed fuse boxes, both that one there and then one in the front, one of the main things I chose to not do was to not run the diesel heaters directly off the D1 hub. Now, it's plenty powerful to run diesel heaters, both an engine preheater and my diesel air heater off the hub, but I chose not to for a few specific reasons. Diesel heaters don't like to be turned off with the power being cut.
if they're running, they can end up destroying themselves because they can't cool down and it melts internal components. The D1 hub, I found, can turn itself off under a few conditions. The first one I found was, even though I've got the eco mode disabled, eco mode being it turns off normally the inverter or the DC on the Apex system, if there is a small or low draw after X amount of hours to save power. Even though that's turned off, I found with the D1 hub that would turn itself off after a couple hours if it didn't think there was anything using it. And I think that was usually around anything under 11 to 17 watt, it would turn itself off. So whilst I was in the workshop for the initial part of the video, every morning I would come in and find the D1 hub turned off. Whilst it was only running things like the fan and the lights, that wasn't enough for the hub to actually really notice it was being used and to not just turn itself off. After I left the workshop and I put the fridge back on and had the Starlink running constantly, that didn't happen anymore because that draw was over sort of the minimum amount the hub wants and just carried on. Now, in settings, you can control the wattage for the DC Eco mode, but even though I've got that just turned off, it was still doing it. So I don't know if that's software or something which could be fixed in the future. Hopefully so. It just seems it would be an option to just disable the DC mode. Also, at a future time of you watching this video, there could have been a software update and that could have been fixed. The other thing which the Charger 2 did, which affected the D1 hub, is the reverse charging feature. So if you enabled reverse charging, it disables the D1 hub until you've turned it off, which is a bit annoying. I don't know if that's intentional or if it's some sort of issue. And you can't turn it back on until you've disabled reverse charging. Now, for the emergency use of a flat starter battery, that's not the end of the world, having your main leisure system turn off for 10 minutes or so, but it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole trickle charge feature, because that takes hours and you're not going to want your DC disabled for hours. The other bit with the Charger 2 and the reverse charging features, which I was a bit disappointed about, is the trickle charge feature. Now, the trickle charge feature, you can limit it to I think about 100 watt or more, just to gently keep your starter battery charged up. Now, having both my diesel heaters running off the starter battery, my engine preheater, my air heater, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have them running off my starter battery overnight and the trickle charger keeping it topped up. Now that's where I came into issues, because if you have the trickle charger enabled in reverse charging features, it turns off the D1 hub. The other point is you can only manually enable the trickle charge feature, it seems, which completely defeats the point of the trickle charge. The trickle charge feature should be automatic. It should be when the engine is not on, so you're not taking your alternator into your leisure system, it should be putting leisure power at the low wattage amount you can set back into the starter battery. It's a trickle charge, it should be automated. You don't really want to manually engage a trickle charger. Now, one of the other companies which makes a power station based alternator charger, it does do that. When you're not charging off the engine, it's reverse charging at a low wattage to keep it topped up. And unfortunately, that didn't work. It would have been brilliant if it did, because it meant I could have my diesel heaters running off my starter battery and they were just getting naturally topped up because the engine was off during the night. For me, I just manually turned on a separate AC to DC charger I had to keep the starter battery maintained. The only other thing which did happen once is I had an issue with the Charger 2 where it just was on but wasn't doing anything or connecting to the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi, so I just had to power cycle it by pulling the cables out and rebooting it, and then that fixed it. That's really the only issue I've had with the Charger 2 on its overall functionality. So then, final little last bit. Overall, it worked for the rest of the season. I didn't have many issues with it. And I think if you're a casual user and want a pretty easy to put together electrical system for your campervan, motorhome, whatever, it functions pretty well. And a few little software caveats, which are also software things which can get updated and changed in the future. Now, I did say I'm going to put a traditional electrical system in this van, which has always been my plan to begin with. The Apex system, the Bluetti system, is going to come back out and go back into the house to be my domestic setup where it's charging off the solar shed in the garden for free power. It's been interesting to use it. I do think over the last couple of years the line is blurred between power station or plug and play style electrical systems and your traditional electrical system, and those lines have definitely become a little bit more blurred with systems like the Bluetti one. I just hope long term there is a system to safely have AC running around the vehicle and done correctly with a consumer unit. So if you are interested in finding out more about the Bluetti equipment and the systems that I've used in the van, consider checking out the links in the description below for Bluetti. If you do like this video, consider checking out the rest of the Arctic series or some of the more build videos for this van. But overall, I just like playing with cool stuff and I want to make content for you guys to enjoy. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.